Nedarim Daf Vav concludes the Gemara's discussion about a question we had on a machlokes between Rav Elazar and the Chachamim about being made for a future Nedarim. The Gemara will conclude with its proofs there, and then we'll have a new Mishnah which will introduce the topic of how long does the husband really have to be made for Nedarim. So let's review the sugya that we've been in the middle of the Gemara on machlokes between Rav Elazar and the Chachamim. Can you be made for a future neder? Can the husband say any neder which you're going to make in the future is a mufer from now? So Rav Elazar said you can do it, and the Chachamim said you can't. Now Rav Elazar said there's a kavach chomer. If you can be made for neder which exists, which means that the issue is already created, certainly you should be able to make for a neder which does not exist, which is weaker. You should be able to preempt. That should be obvious. That's a kavach chomer. Now the Gemara has been trying to understand, according to Rav Elazar, that you're made for a future neder. How does that work? Does the neder chal and then it's canceled, or does it prevent it from ever being chal in the first place? The Gemara explained what the nafkamina was. Now the Gemara is trying to figure out which one it is. In order to do that, the Gemara is going through a number of brises that represent the discussion between Rav Elazar and the Chachamim. So the Gemara brings two here that the Chachamim said to Rabbi Eliezer to attack his kavach chomer. His kavach chomer again was that if you can be made for a neder which exists, certainly you should be able to be made for a neder which is weaker in the sense that it does not exist yet. So the Chachamim said, well, look at mikvah. Mikvah works to be matayar something which is tamei, but it doesn't work to prevent something from becoming tamei. So obviously your kavach chomer is wrong. You can't say that it is easier to prevent something than it is to make something that is already tamei be tahar. That was a tie against the kavach chomer, and the Gemara points out here you clearly see that what Rabbi Eliezer was saying was that it's preventative. That is never chal in the first place, not that it's chal and it's canceled. So the Gemara points out, but then there's another taina that the Chachamim had, which is they make a kavach chomer from a kli where you're being mitaher a kli that is tamei, and the way it's expressed here is, again, they say that the kavach chomer has to be wrong because you can be mitaher a kli which is tamei already, but you cannot put a kli in the mikvah that this should work for when it becomes tamei. That this Tevila here should be metaharid when it becomes tamei in the future. And therefore, again, they're saying that the kavach chomer doesn't make sense. But here you clearly see that they're phrasing it in a way that it does become tamei, but this tefillah should take it off. It should apply right away afterwards. So these are the two tzedadim. These are the two sides of the question we had as to what did Rabbi Eliezer mean. Did he mean that it's preventative, that the neder should never be chal because of the preemptive hafara, or did he mean to say that the hafara should cancel it right after it takes effect? So the Gemara therefore says you don't have a proof from either of these two, and what obviously is happening is that the Chachamim were themselves unclear as to what Rabbi Eliezer's shita was. Was he saying that it's preventative? If so, then they bring the proof from mikvah. If he was saying, however, that it's chal in the future, it's chal as soon as the neder is made, then they brought the proof from kli. Right now the Gemara brings another proof. So the Gemara says that Rabbi Eliezer said to the Chachamim that you look at plants. If you have tamei seeds and you plant them, they become tahar. And we said based on that, we brought a kavach chomer based on that certainly a seed which is growing, a plant which is growing already, you cannot be mitamei it while it's growing in the ground. Because if planting it in the ground takes the tumah off, certainly planting it in the ground prevents tumah from coming on in the first place. So there you clearly see that this kavach chomer is a true kavach chomer, and that was his proof against the Chachamim. And here again, you clearly see that he's saying that it's preventative, that it never becomes tumah in the first place. Now, the Gemara doesn't argue with that. The Gemara just shows that the Chachamim have to also hold of such similar kavach chomers, and they bring a few more. They have a brayso that says that a person can sell his daughter as an amma. However, he cannot sell her once she's past the age of naras. Now, how do you know that? So we learn that through a kavach chomer. If she's sold before the age of naras, once she becomes an nara, she goes free. Certainly, you can't sell her when she's a nara. So again, you see the same kavach chomer applies. You see that Rabbi Eliezer's taina is correct. If you have something that takes effect on an existing sale, certainly if she became an Arab before the sale, it blocks the sale from happening in the first place. Same taina that we said over here. So how could you say, therefore, that the Chachamim are not aware of this kavach chomer and they don't hold of this kavach chomer and apply it to hafaras nedarim? So the Gemara says they are aware of the Kal V'chomer, they hold of it, but they hold that it doesn't apply to Hafaras Nedarim. And the reason is because, like we said in the Mishnah, they have a Gzeres HaKasav linking the Kiyum of a Neder and the Hafara of a Neder. It says, Isha Yikimena v'Isha Yifirena. You can only be made for a Neder if it's Mekayimable. A Neder which does not exist cannot be Mekayim. That everybody agrees to. And therefore, the Chachamim say that it's linked to a Neder, to Hafaras Nedarim, that can't be done either if it does not exist, if the Neder does not exist yet. That is a halacha that overrides this Kal V'chomer, but Rabbi Eliezer does not hold of that Gzeres HaKasav. And now we get to our next Mishnah, which talks about what is the time period in which a husband has or a father has to be meifir a neder. And we said that it's 1 day. The question is, how do you define a day? So the Mishnah says clearly it's defined by sundown. That from when the neder is made until the next coming sundown, the end of the day, the nightfall that occurs next, that is when the day is over. And the Mishnah says that could be either a lot of time, it could be a short amount of time. If she makes the neder just before nightfall, you have a very short time to be meifir. If you make it just after nightfall, you have all the way until the next nightfall to be meifir the neder. And the point the Mishnah is trying to bring out is that this is different than if you would say me'ez la'es, that if you would say that it's 24 hours from whatever time is made today till whatever time tomorrow, that's how you define the day. That would be the same amount of time no matter which time of the day she makes it. All right, now the Gemara brings a brisa which says this is actually machlokes. We have an anonymous brisa where you have a Tanakama that says that it is one that is it has to be made the day, how far it has to be done the day she makes the neder and the husband hears about it. And then you have Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon who say no, it's actually 24 hours me'es la'es. What's the reason of the two opinions? So the Tanakam holds, the pasuk says b'yom shamai, the hafar has to be in the day that he hears it, so it has to be that day, not the next day, and therefore it goes until sundown. Now the Rabbanon who argue that is the zug, the pair of Yosef Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, they say it's learned from the pasuk which says mi yoim el yoim. It has to go from day to day. That means 24 hours from this time today to this time tomorrow. Now, what is each going to do with the other's opinion? So the Tanakhama says mi yoim el yoim. That just is to tell you that it can be done not only during the day but also at night. If it said b'yom shamai, you think it's only at night. If it's only during the day, it says b'yom shamai. But if the neder is made at night, you can't be made for it at night. So there was kamash malon. It says b'yom el yom from day to day. If it's made after nightfall at night, you could be made for it the rest of the night as well as tomorrow. Now, the Gemara says, according to Rabbi Yosef Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, that you have 24 hours. What are you going to do with that it says b'yom shemai? It has to be on that day. So Gemara explains, they will say that means to say that it is this day, this 24 hours, and not till next week. If it just b'yom l'yom, you may think it means, let's say, from Sunday this week to Sunday next week. That's teach me. No, it has to be this day itself. Now, what is the halacha? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Shua ben Levi says the halacha is not like that pair. That is not like Rabbi Yosef Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. The halacha is like the Tanakama. You have until nightfall. The Gemara says that Levi wanted to do an actual case like those Tanaim, and Rav said, my uncle said that that's not correct. The halacha is not like that pair. You have to go like the Tanakama. Now the Gemara just mentions two other halachos. The Gemara says, and these are brought here because they are related to Rav. So the Gemara says that Chia bar Rav would fire arrows while he was listening to people trying to be meifir, trying to get a heter from him for their Nedarim. And Rabbi bar Huna would do it sitting if he was sitting, standing if he was standing, whatever he was in the middle of, he continued to do. The Gemara's point is that these two would not pay close attention to Nedarim because they said it's not hard to find a heter. You don't need to go find a Pesach. You could just find Charata. You could just find that they regret it, and therefore they didn't show tremendous focus when they were involved in giving a heter for Nedarim that